I want to hit on one thing that I've read about and seen in your career, and that was you were covering NASCAR when Senior got in the wreck.
I remember every detail.
And that was that your first TV appearance when that happened?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm gonna sit here and say yes. I'm 99.9% sure.
I've done my research.
And I mean that was peroxide, Marty, son. I had to bleach
I know.
bleach tips and the whole thing. Dale Jr. and I made some real bad decisions back in the day, son, because that was Peroxide Jr. too. He also had bleach blonde hair at that time. We were trying to be rebels. What idiots. Anyway, all right, so that morning there was an overwhelming air that this was going to be a resurgent time for Dale, because he'd finished second to Bobby Labonte the previous season in the points in 2000. And this was the year he was going to break Richard Petty's championship record in 2001. And he was obviously very introspective. You could see that on pit road. He's very affectionate to Teresa. He's hugging Junior. They're praying. And it was just a beautiful scene. Like there was this awesome energy around him. Even more than normal. I mean, there was this aura around Dale.
Yep.
I've only been around a few people in my life who had that aura. You can feel the force field, MJ.
Yep.
There's a force field around him.
Tiger,
definitely.
Pat Spinoza, yeah, I know.
And I remember those last couple laps when it was so emotional because he'd given Michael Waltrip this opportunity. Michael was 0 for 462. And here he is running the car that Dale had believed enough in him to put him in. His namesake's running second. And he's going to watch those two run to the victory. One of those two guys, Now if Junior's wild enough to try, one of them two's going to win a day. DEI is going to win a Daytona 500.
Yeah.
And it's either going to be Junior's first and fulfill a prophecy, or it's going to be Michael's and break a big streak and fulfill Dale's promise for what Michael was going to do. And then the wreck happens. And people to this day will say Dale was blocking for those two. Only one person knows that answer. And so Sterling and him get together. He goes up the track, hits Ken Schrader. The angle of the car is such, and he hits the wall. But it did not look like there was that wreck all the time at speedways.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't fantastic where he was going ass over tea kettle and flipping and went out of the racetrack or something. We all just figured Dale would get out and be disappointed for a minute, but have that grin on his face and grab Michael around the neck in victory lane, and dude, we did it. And I was standing in victory lane. Let me back up. So my job that day was twofold. The first part of that was to run out to pit road and interview Rusty Wallace.
Yep.
Because Rusty had another near miss at Daytona.
Mm-hmm.
And I was supposed to get Rusty's reaction to the near miss. Pat, I got out to the 2-car. Rusty's unbuckling. Window neck comes down. And he looks at me and he goes, "How's Dale?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know." He was like, go find out about Dale. And I'm like, okay. I got ready to ask my question. And he goes, "Damn it, I told you to go check on Dale." Because athletes know, Pat.
Wow.
Athletes know when it's bad.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. So I went down the pit lane, and I got stopped by the police. And you could see the wreck in turn 4 down in the grass. Kenny's down there, Eminem's car, of course, the Black 3,
yep.
Ambulances. I'm like, they won't let me go. So I go back to find Rusty. Rusty's gone. So I went to Victory Lane. And I'm in Victory Lane, and I could sense the energy was weird, but I didn't think much of it. And there was Michael's publicist publicist at the time was a friend of mine at the time named Brooke Mitchell. She's now Brooke Hondros. And I saw her and I'm like, dude, I don't know about this. They won't let me down there. They're like blocked off. And like you could just see her face shift. And then I went to the media room. And back then the media room was very small. And I walked in there and there are these old school, hard ass journalists. Ed Hinton, Mike Mulhern, Ben Blake. These guys that were NASCAR lifer journalists. And David Poole from the Charlotte Observer. Buddy, they're emotional, like different. I'm like, what the hell? There's no way. I mean, he might be hurt. And then my coworker, Dave Rodman, his wife worked in medicine down at Halifax, Daytona. And Dave, we had landlines back then.
Yep.
And we had a landline. Dave got on that landline. And he's talking to, I know it's Denise now, he's talking to his wife. And he just put his head on my shoulder and started to sob. And I'm like, you gotta be shitting me. And I walked out, Lainey was with me. And she was sitting in our rental car with her feet up on the dashboard with a book in her lap. And I went to the passenger side of that car, and she looked up at me, and I could see her face, and she rolls the window down. She's like, what is wrong with you? You are white as a ghost. And I said, I think Dale Earnhardt's dead. And I said, baby, we're going to be here a while. I don't know what is about to happen, but if you need to leave, go. I don't know where we're going to get food. I don't know anything. But I'm looking at the garage area because where the parking lot for the media was, there was nothing but a chain link fence between that and the garage. And these guys I'd known for a couple years now were walking around like zombies. Sure enough, shortly thereafter, I was back in the media center, and Mike Helton, who at the time was the president of NASCAR, walked into the media center and said those now infamous words. This is undoubtedly the most difficult announcement I've ever had to make, but in the accident in turn 4, we've lost Dale Earnhardt. And there was cameras everywhere, because by then, CNN, all the hardcore news stations, everybody's there. And this is an interesting addendum to that. Again, we had that landline, and I had one of my second cell phone ever that was the first company issue one I ever had. And there were these speakers in the ceiling of the Benny Kahn Media Center. And in one hand, I had that cell phone held up to the speaker, and I had that landline in the other hand. And on one phone was Hank Parker Jr. I don't know if you remember Hank. Hank was one of Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s best buddies. His father was a mini Bassmasters champion.
Okay,
Hank Parker.
Gotcha.
And he raced in what was then the Busch Series, and on the other phone was Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah.
Who would ultimately tie Dale for championships in NASCAR. But they listened to that announcement on those phones real time. But it was such a crazy moment in time. CNN put me on TV, and I was scared. I was terrified. I didn't know how to speak at the time that way.
Yeah.
And one of the first things I said to you was brevity is king, and I've been anything but brief in this interview. But at the time, I couldn't get my thoughts through my mouth. And I've never gone back and watched that. I'd be embarrassed to. But how are you supposed to encapsulate Superman dying?
Yep.
Because Superman doesn't die.
Yeah.
He was indestructible, man. And I'll finish with this. I've always admired Junior. There's a NASCAR right now because Junior made the decision to race. The entire industry teams, owners, sponsors, certainly NASCAR corporate, other drivers, everybody looked at Junior. Are we going to race or not?
Yep.
And Junior chose to race. And so everybody raced. And
Golly.
he put a lot on his shoulders, man. And
Yeah.
he's a stud. He's a great, great person.